So I'm here with Rob Catton, who's currently 3-0 in our tournament today at British Magic Time Cup. Tell us what deck you're playing today, Rob.
So I'm playing BW Control. It was a toss-up between that or BMT Humans, but I like this because it's got a better matchup against green-white tokens. At least I think it does anyway. And yeah, it's going against all the little aggro decks because of the Fall Anguish in the deck.
Any other considerations that went into choosing your deck?
It's kind of like I don't really want to play anything, but this is the worst, the best of all the worst decks, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I'm not really that enthused about much. I'm hoping the next set, Eldritch Moon, is it called? We'll shake things up a bit. But yeah, I like control decks, and this is the best one, best Languish deck.
So Languish, that's one of the key cards in the deck. We run 4 of those, and we bolster it with a Planar Outburst as well, I believe. Or are you not running one of those?
Yeah,
you are running one of those as well. How does that compare to some of the other decks in the format, compared to what removal they're able to run and how they deal with board states?
So some of the decks can play Languish, like Sultai Seasons Pass plays Languish as well, but it doesn't play the full 4. It usually plays 2 because it wants to play creatures like Sylvan Advocate and Tireless Tracker, and it doesn't really synergize as well, whereas this deck doesn't actually play any creatures. And then, in fact, I tell a lie, it didn't play any creatures, but I've got 1 Lin Valor in the main, but that doesn't get hit by the Languish anyway. So this deck really takes advantage of Languish, the best out of all the other decks, by using Planeswalkers to control the board, and that way you don't need creatures.
So the general strategy of the deck, how does it play out if the game's going well for you? What do you want to achieve?
It's hard to tell when a game's going well for Black-White because it doesn't really be doing very much, but you can usually tell how well it's going by their side of the board. If their side of the board's empty and my graveyard's full of removal spells, it's going pretty well. Usually I want to make a Gideon on turn 4, so you can start getting some presence on the board, and depending on the matchup you might need a clock, like against Red-Green Ramp or Blue-Red Ulamog. You need to be able to do something to pressure them. So yeah, basically hit your land drops and control the board.
So one of the key cards in the deck, in my experience, has been Read the Bones. For me, that seems to be the card I'm most excited to see in an opening hand. A lot of the decks in the format don't really have card draw or card selection in the way that Read the Bones does. How are you finding the life loss is impacting your games?
So the 1 Lin Valor I mentioned I've got in the main was an Omnix list. I've put the second Omnix list into the sideboard because I found myself using my life total a lot with Anguish Unmaking and Read the Bones, and even Pain Lands as well, because sometimes the mana can be a little bit awkward. Yeah, the life loss is something you definitely need to be wary of. Sometimes you just can't play that extra Read the Bones, or you have to put an Anguish Unmaking to the bottom even though it would be useful. Yeah, Read the Bones, like as you said, is a really important card. It's like a mini Dig Through Time. You look at 4 instead of 7, but and you still get 2.
So we've talked a little bit about the early plays, Read the Bones, Gideon, removal spells to keep the board tidy. How are we wanting to close the game down? How do you actually seal the deal and win the game for yourself?
So sometimes Gideon can be enough. Gideon's the number 1 man in this format. If you're left unchecked, he can just take the game away by himself. But he doesn't make that much of an impact. If you're just zeroing him every time making 2/2, doesn't make that much of an impact. So usually a huge Secure the Wastes. Make X's 5 or 6, which we can use to flip your Westfell Abbey, because the 9/7 Ormondal can finish the game quite well, and Sorin as well is really hard to kill because he goes up to, I think it goes up to 7 if you plus it straight away, and that's really hard for a lot of decks to be able to kill, especially Ban and Green White, which don't have any Planeswalker removal spells. They have to do it with just creatures, so that's how the removal spells complement the Planeswalkers.
So we've got Sorin, who's difficult to remove. His +1 will gradually bleed your opponent dry. Have you ever used his ultimate?
No, it's one of the worst ultimates there is on Planeswalkers, just because it's definitely not guaranteed to win you the game. Like, there's plenty of decks that can actually beat that fairly likely. Like if you're playing in the Mirror or a Red-Green Ramp deck, something with a sweeper, it's more of a liability than a threat. And I find that if you just keep putting Sorin, that'll kill him just as quick as his ultimate would do, probably anyway. So yeah, mainly ignore his third ability.
So most lists are running no creatures at all in the main, or maybe just 1 or 2. We've got some flexibility in the sideboard, especially because of the colourless sources in the mana base as well, from Westfell Abbey and Caves of Koilos. Are you on the Eldrazi plan for the sideboard?
Yeah, so I'm playing Owen Turtonwald's WMCQ list, which has 2 reality smashers, 2 Thought Not Seers, and 2 Eldrazi displacers in the sideboard, as well as a couple of Kalitas as well. So yeah, I just played against Red Green Ramp round 3 and sided in all the Eldrazi. Eldrazi displacer is not amazing against Ramp, but a 3-mana 3/3 is sometimes what you need to be able to clock them. Yeah, like Thought Not Seers, exactly what in the matchups where you need to be aggressive, it's disruption and a huge body. So, and Reality Smash obviously is great at that too.
Any particular problem cards that you struggle to deal with, or that you really don't want to see from your opponent?
In the first round, I played against the Blue-White Dragons deck, which had Always Watching and Udjtai, which was a nightmare for me because Udjtai then won't tap because it has Vigilance, so it has Hexproof forever, and it has 5 toughness now because they're Always Watching. So my only answer to it was a Planner Outburst or Anguished Unmaking on the Always Watching. But if you don't have that straight away, then you can seriously they can run away with the game very quickly with that. So that wasn't great. Apart from that, Gideon is if you don't have an answer to Gideon in this deck, you're going to lose. So if I don't have an answer to Gideon, I'm just terrified of Gideon on the other side.
You mentioned that you bumped Linvala into the main. I've seen that in a lot of sideboards, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone playing it in the main deck before. Is there anything else that you've tweaked in the deck, or anything else that you would tweak if you were building a list again for another tournament?
I'm not sure about a couple of sideboards. I mean, Hallowed Moonlight, I think I just haven't played the right matchups for it. And when I have played against Green White or something, I found myself just cycling it because I can't afford to have the dead card sat in hand. But I haven't seen a Black White list that doesn't play 2 Hallowed Moonlight in the main, so I'm a little bit nervous about just cutting them because I've only been playing the deck for a couple of weeks, and I'm not one to just think I know better than hundreds of people who play the deck. I'm pretty happy with how it is right now. I might cut one of I've got 2 Battlefield Forges. I might cut one for a Blighted Fen in the main, which is a little bit greedy, but I think that could be useful against things like Udjtai, like I mentioned, and Ormondal as well.
Best and worst matchups, one of each.
I think the best matchup is Bant Humans or Bant Collected Company. It's really hard to imagine how you could lose against that matchup with 4 Languish. Because if they play too many creatures, they get Languish. If they don't play enough, they get Spot Removal to death and 2 for 1. So I think that's really good matchup. And the worst, I don't particularly want to play against this blue-red Ulamog deck because their counter spells are really hard to navigate around because you need to have enough extra lands in play to be able to play around Clash of Wills. And at that point, if you're playing Gideon on turn 6 or 7 to play around a counter spell, it's just not going to be effective enough against them. And if I don't have Gideon, I can't have a clock, and then I'm going to lose to Ulamog. So yeah, Dan Cocking's playing blue-red Ulamog, so I don't really want to play against him.
Anything else interesting you'd like to tell us about the deck?
I think it's got a pretty good green-white tokens matchup, which is one of the best things you can be doing in this format because that is the considered best deck. But I don't think there's much that exciting about the deck apart from that. It's a pretty boring deck to play, so if you want to get into a game and play a lot of creatures and kill your opponent, then this probably isn't the deck for you. If you want to sit there and just kill everything your opponent does and do nothing for a lot of the game, this is probably the deck for you.
I think that's why I chose it last time. Right, thanks very much, Rob. Good luck next round, and probably see you in the top 8.